Joining us now is Kachi Ofia with stories trending around the world. Hello, Kachi. Good morning. Okay, catch it again this morning.
Good morning, Dr. Batsi.
Good morning.
I was wondering, aren't you going to tell me to catch it? Good morning,
He has to. It was coming.
Begin. Good morning, viewers. Let's take a look at what's trending today. A very, very distressing video. In fact, videos of hundreds of Afghan people desperately trying to get out of Kabul in the midst of the Taliban takeover. This has surfaced all over social media. Now, the dramatic clips shared online shows hundreds of men running alongside a U.S. plane as it rolls down the runway, with some even clinging to the side of it. Now, in other footages, we see civilians frantically just clamber up an already overcrowded, buckling set of air stairs. And, you know, this is just this is an incredibly sad sight. You know, it's terrifying to look at. And to think that the 20th anniversary of 9/11 is coming in on the back of this, you know, it's just very, very sad. I mean, the fundamentalist group wishes, basically, that's the Taliban, they wish to restore Sharia to Afghanistan. And then those unable to leave the country will have to adapt to a way of life they have not seen in 2 decades. And when they last ruled Afghanistan from 1996 to 2011, it was terrible. Women could not work. Girls were not allowed to attend schools. Women had to cover their face and be accompanied by a male relative if they wanted to venture out of their homes. Otherwise, they risked being beaten or flogged or stoned. Music, TV, cinemas, all of these were banned. I mean, it was looking to end mixed gender education, you know, return to Islamic law. And to be honest, looking at the events that have happened, especially with people like Malala Yousafzai, who've been very, very vocal about how she wants education and, you know, the girl-child rights to return to Afghanistan, this is 102 plus steps back. It's really scary.
What it is, it's very sad. You talked about Malala Yousafzai, who was shot for wanting an education, and that is just a stark reminder of what the Taliban's values really are. In spite of all their assurances that they've changed, a leopard does not change its spots. Already we're seeing the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. It's quite clear what is coming next. And I just think it's always so sad that at this point, I have to confess that I'm thinking the only way out for the people of Afghanistan is going to be a civil war if the different factions within the Taliban turn against each other, similar to what we saw here when Boko Haram's leader could not be felled by the Nigerian military. It was ISWAP that got him in the end. So that's what tends to happen in these situations. That really is the only hope that I can see right now, since the cavalry has left, so definitely nobody's sending in the cavalry to come and save them. It's all looking quite grim, hence this desperation. 2 people fell off of those airplanes. What must be their state of mind to actually cling to an airplane? It's really disturbing.
Well, yesterday we said that there's chaos in Kabul, and this is a clear illustration of that chaos. It looks like people are trying to run away from hell, the hellish condition that has taken over Afghanistan. In this particular instance, about 5 people reportedly died. The Americans helped to airlift about 680 persons out of that zone. And, you know, people are desperate because they have now found themselves faced with gross uncertainty. And if what they know about the Taliban is anything to go by, then, of course, their future is certainly most uncertain. And so, natural instinct, people will do desperate things in order to escape. However, in spite of all of this, you will recall that yesterday, the President of the United States, Joe Biden, made a statement saying that he stands by his decision. He tried to blame President Donald Trump and then probably admits that perhaps, you know, the exit of the United States from Afghanistan could have been better managed. But in any case, you know, the people of Afghanistan will have to take their own destiny in their hands. And that is the lesson, you know, for all countries that tend to rely on the indispensability of the United States. At the end of the day, the United States will protect its own interests and you will be left to your own devices. However, the international community, I think, should not just leave the people of Afghanistan at the mercy of the Taliban, because there are now issues about, refugees, going to neighboring countries. There will be issues in due course, of course, about human rights abuses. And I do not think that the Taliban can be trusted. They've made promises. They've asked the civil servants to return to their desk. They've given all kinds of assurances about how the state will work. But, nobody can trust the Taliban. And so that's why, not just at the humanitarian level, also in terms of the state itself, Afghanistan is in very big trouble. Its economy is going to be very badly hit. Earlier this morning, there was talk about the opium business. But yet, there are mineral resources in that country. There's lithium, there's cobalt, and, but this is a country that depends mostly on foreign assistance. Would other countries of the world continue to provide assistance to Afghanistan with the Taliban in place? But the people who will suffer at the end of the day are the people of Afghanistan themselves.
Sad.
So the great sage, Warren Buffett, the great sage of Omaha, Nebraska, the sage of Nebraska, Warren Buffett will always say this. He says, if you're watching a game of poker, for the first 20 minutes and you don't know who the patsy is in the game of poker, and the patsy is the person that is losing, then you are the patsy yourself. So in all of this, if you're watching this grand game of poker America is playing, and you don't know who the patsy is here, it is the Afghan people that are watching that are the patsy. And that's what America does. They don't care about you. In fact, I was making an illustration yesterday that America behaves like the Nigerian rat. You know what the Nigerian rat does? They bite you, and the next thing they blow air, cool air to cool it down so you don't feel the effects. They set up the Taliban, the Mujahideen, in 1994. They funded Mullah Omar to destroy the former structure of the Mujahideen that they used Charlie Wilson to give weapons to fight the Soviets. So they destroyed the country because it suited them. There are copious notes about University of Nebraska offering radicalization materials for the Mujahideens just to get them pepped up to fight the Soviet Union. They sent those materials in and they funded them big time. And when they took over the country, America had no qualms with it. The only reason they went in was because somebody that had fought with the Mujahideens and the Taliban, called Osama bin Laden, that was the leader of Al-Qaeda, had come after them when 9/11 happened. That was why they went in there. They had no problems with the Taliban ruling. So all of this hypocrisy that Joe Biden is doing, if you fall for it, then you are the party in this game of poker.
No, it's obvious they have no problem with the Taliban.
They have no problems with the Taliban running things.
They had peace talks with them in the Trump era.
So they came in there, they did the deal with the Taliban. They said, the Taliban, step aside for now. Because, wherever America is, America wants to be seen as a custodian of democracy. So let's give them democracy. So step aside, Taliban. Leave the scene. Then they brought in democracy. How did they do it? They brought in their own person, Hamid Karzai. And the next thing, they brought in Ashraf Ghani, 2 presidents. Gave them the taste of democracy. Gave them the taste of Western life. But the Taliban kept on telling them in one corner that it's going to be time up very soon. They said, we understand. Just let them enjoy it. So they enjoyed all of this, and the Afghan people kept on falling for it. And when it was time up, the Americans left, released 5,000 Taliban fighters, and it continued. And this game has started all over again. So they've played a good pawn of the Afghan people. And you know what? The struggle begins, because China is already saying we recognize the Taliban government, because China has their own interest. And the country is surrounded by a lot of America's enemy. China is there, Soviet Union is there, Iran is there, Pakistan is there.
Yeah.
So they're all there, and they're saying, you know what, let's just dominate this area for some time. The biggest loser here is an average person whose only crime is being an Afghan citizen. And that's why we should learn in Nigeria. America is not your superhero. We should build our own country.
No, but Rufai, George W. Bush said they went in there to protect women's rights and education.
Hey! Jesus Christ.
We need to take a short break now, Kachi.
It's a mess.
And when we return, the conversation will continue. Okay, we'll take this short break and come back to you, Kachi.
You're welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. We're going to keep up with what's trending today in Nigeria, where weeks after banning the use of mannequins in the state, officials of the Islamic Police Force, aka Hisbah, in Kano State have given approval for traders in the state to use the mannequins, however with very stiff conditions. Now, according to Hisbah officials, traders are allowed to only use headless mannequins to advertise clothing. Now, this, it said, is because Islamic doctrines are against idolatry. So speaking to newsmen, the commander of Hisbah in the state, Haruna Ibsina, said Islam frowns on idolatry, and with the head on, it looks like a human being. So he also said traders are expected to cover up their headless mannequins at all times because, this is to show that there's certain shapes, like the shapes of the breast or the shapes of the bottom, contrary to the teachings of Sharia, and it's just simply unacceptable. Now, reacting to this new directive, the traders at Sabongari, a Christian-dominated part of Kano State, expressed their displeasure with the Hisbah's order. I'm just trying to imagine looking at a headless mannequin. That is scary. I mean, you might as well just put it on a hanger. That is going to be very, that's like, nah, no, please, just don't bother.
Well, the whole point of mannequins and window dressing and all of that in general, visual merchandise, is to entice customers. And I think that's Hisbah's point.
Yeah.
They're trying to stamp out enticement, okay? So the whole thing about the modesty in Islam is to do with stamping out natural instincts that may exist and encourage people to toe a more spiritual line. So modest dressing, not flaunting any kind of vanity, headless mannequins. That's what you get in Saudi Arabia. You don't have you have totally headless mannequins. Even in foreign stores, you can have like a Marks and Spencer's that looks completely different in Saudi Arabia than how it looks in other countries because they cannot have a pretty painted, mannequin's face. They're very strict about it, which is all very well and good. I understand that that's a religious tenet and I respect it. But my issue is, why does that happen here? They're thinking, I guess, of the thin end of the wedge because you're looking at, look at this pretty mannequin's face and what have you. It might seem perfectly innocuous, but this is how immorality seeps in bit by bit into a culture, such that I'm no prude, but even I sometimes look at things and I think, how is this acceptable in polite society today? That's what they're trying to do. But what I see is another thin end of another wedge. The fact that in Nigeria, in the constitution that we had a president in the person of Obasanjo who allowed Sharia law to be implemented in this country in the first case. That, for me, that thin end of the wedge has now eventually over the years widened that wedge to the point where we have such Islamic extremism in this country that it bears no relation to what is actually in the Quran. Why we have things like Boko Haram, why we're battling with insurgency in this country. So we always have to be careful with what we're playing with and how far we're willing to go and what we're willing to tolerate. Hisbah police does not have the right to make some of the injunctions and some of the arrests that they do, yet they go ahead and do it unchecked. And for me, it bothers me. It's troubling.
Well, 12 states of the north have, the application of the Sharia law. And the most notorious of these states is Kano State. And I think it has to do particularly with the personality of the current Coordinator General of the Hisbah Police in Kano State. His name is Sheikh Harun Ibn Shina. He's otherwise elsewhere described as a showman. And as the Commander General of that particular body, we have had just this year alone, either he's giving directives that lorry loads of bottles of alcohol should be destroyed. In one instance, the problem was a haircut, a mohawk haircut by a particular young man. In another instances, it was restrictions placed on the mode of transportation that can be used by women. And now he's talking about mannequins, headless mannequins, inanimate objects that are used, to make clothes, attractive so that you can buy them. And he says that this is against the Islamic injunction. He says that this is a case of idolatry. Do people worship mannequins? You can't even if you choose to have the mannequin in your own house, he says it is unacceptable. So I think at one level is the problem of the individual who is leading that Hisbah police, the moral police, that is riding roughshod over fundamental human rights in Kano State. Now, he talked about, sensitizing the people and all of that. But, well, I don't see any sensitization that Ibn Shino's moral police in Kano State has engaged in. Again, when you talk about the Sharia law, it's a personal orthodoxy. it's something you choose to submit yourself to. If you're a Muslim and you abide by it, but not something that can be turned into a criminal orthodoxy, because the Constitution of Nigeria is very clear that there should be no state religion. And what they are trying to do in Kano is the Hisbah police trying to impose a state religion on that state. And it's not surprising that people who live in Sabungiri, in Kano, who are predominantly Christians, they are kicking. They are saying, no, this cannot apply to us. We don't have a problem with mannequins because we don't worship mannequins. But that's not the position of the Hisbah police. This is another case, of the, meddlesomeness, of the excessiveness of the Hisbah police under the watch of Sheikh Harun ibn Shina. The other day, he was complaining about the dressing of Ms. Bayero, the fiancée of Yusuf Buhari, and we brought that here. And I said, we said, how is that his problem? Whatever a bride decides to wear, on her wedding day during her introduction to her husband. I think we all need to be reminded in this country that when you go this far with religious sentiments and with religious orthodoxies, you hit up the system, unnecessarily. And I guess that the Hisbah police in Kano State is also being indulged by the state government. Where is the role of the state government in this regard? Allowing the state, to impose religion on people who, under the Constitution of Nigeria, which is the ground norm, which is the basic law, can make their own individual choices.
Yeah.
I think for me, the hypocrisy in this country is scary. And one other thing we should look for after corruption in the country is hypocrisy. It's so easy for all of us to abuse Taliban. Oh, they are denying women's rights. Oh, they are doing this. Oh, they have taken television out. What is this on ground? We have a constitution that is the #1 law, supersedes other law. People say you can't advertise. You can't destroy bottles of alcohol, but they will still collect the VAT revenue from alcohol and beer. And that's why I was happy when that judgment happened out of Rivers State. Maybe every state now should collect the VAT based on what it has produced in economic activity. And let's see how some states will survive without that alcohol VAT. You see, we need to tell ourselves the truth in this country. And that's one thing we are not so kind at doing to ourselves. We don't tell ourselves the truth. And people that tell the truth, they say, oh, they shouldn't say anything. No. This is a secular society. Nigeria is a secular state. No matter the argument you have in favor of the Sharia law, the Constitution doesn't recognize the state religion. And so it is a personal thing. Keep it to yourself. And that's why I am never in support of government paying with government money to sell pilgrims. If you want to go on pilgrimage, go yourself. It's not the government's business in all of this. Let's keep religion out of state. Because see, when we keep putting religion inside state, there's no how we have divisions. Mahatma Gandhi further said, nobody should claim that his religion have the monopoly of the truth. And that's the beginning of problems. And we have seen that increasingly. What caused the partitioning of India? Is it not religion? Ali Jinnah had to go with the Muslims to Pakistan, and Gandhi and the likes had to remain. Pakistan had to divide into two. Then some people went ahead to form Bangladesh. And the Hindu stayed back in India. Let's keep religion out of state. Let state have its own workings. Please.
I couldn't agree more. Well, that will be what's trending today on the morning show.
Okay, thank you very much, Kachi. We'll wait for you tomorrow to return to catch the flow again and fire on.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much indeed.